Welcome to another episode of the Youth Leader's Brain. We are going to have a shorter episode that we've...
10 minutes, maybe.
10 or 15 minutes or so. About the topic of mission statements, and honestly, if you're watching this and you haven't watched the other one on the action cycle and the start, that's almost like part one. This is part two, and I would encourage you to watch that first, a short little video that gives you kind of the context of where a mission statement starts. So a question for you: when you became responsible for the youth group, did the pastor give you a mission? The mission statement?
No.
No?
So I inherited a youth staff that said, I think we have one of those.
Okay.
But they couldn't ever produce it.
So. Yeah. Here's an interesting thought for you, because I believe that every pastor has in his mind, okay, you're coming on staff, here's your mission. Like you have a mission. But whether or not they put it on paper and said this is it and made it obvious, chances are, I would guess most people have not given that. Now, they may have shared a few things of what their hopes were or what they're wanting to do, but a mission statement, as we get started here, is something that you still have to make sure is consistent with your pastor's mission for you.
Yeah, and I've talked with my pastor since, and I know kind of the guidelines to be able to create a mission statement. So he gave us flexibility and freedom, but said, hey, I want parents to be very important, and that they are responsible for their kids, and you are there to help parents as well as to provide reinforcement for parents and a fun time for kids to have a good, safe social area to learn. So he gave me plenty of these are my guidelines here, but go make a mission statement, which is always nice to have the guidelines to know, okay, I know what my pastor's philosophy is now, and I can then go back to Scripture and really pull from the principles there to put together a mission statement or a purpose statement that really flows into what I want to do and what I can get passionate about.
So this really isn't for us today. This isn't like a top 5, top 10. Just a few thoughts about mission statements. So start us off. What's something to remember, or something that's been good for you, that's been helpful with?
I think for me, the probably one of the most important things is to see the value of kids. And so if it's just babysitting time or child care, and that's how you want to treat your youth group, I think you're missing out on some importance of the principles that the Bible communicates in the tenderness and the value of a young heart and a young soul. And so if your mission statement is just to provide fun and social and physical interaction with like believers, I think you're missing a pretty fruitful and powerful part of what a youth group could be. So that's one. I can't say it's like the most important, but it's one of the most important in kind of my philosophies or my principles that I've pulled. Is that one even if you have a youth group of 1, 2, 3, that one young person does need something that hits them for their generation or their age. They need someone to invest in them spiritually as well as physically and socially, so that they, outside of mom and dad, so that they get some balance into those 3 areas of life.
Yeah, it's for me, a mission statement kind of helps almost limit what my responsibility is. It's one of the really easy things. I mean, you just care for these kids, you love them, and you kind of get to know them, and you get to know what their needs are. And all of a sudden, and this happens with some of my volunteer staff as well, it's like, I want to just adopt this kid. I want to be the parent of this kid. I could be their grandpa and grandma, and teacher. And you're like, wait a minute. God's given them other ones of those. You don't get to take over the whole child's life. So that's probably, it probably was a good thing for me there. Another thing that happened to me every now and then is somebody else in the church would be like, God, this is a whole youth group. There's 20 of you, you guys need to all do, and they give me some huge job in the church, that go pass out 50,000 flyers. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, does that fit into what we're doing? Now, some of the things that they want us to do, yeah, that's good, but sometimes it's almost like, well, just let the youth group do it. Oh, just let the youth group do it. Oh, the youth, and
They've got energy.
Right. They're young. And so that's where I'm like, okay, I need a mission statement just to kind of define where we fit and not get too big or off kilter of what we should be doing.
Yeah, and also just where you fit in the church. Does your church want you to function as high school church? Is it its own, not separate entity, but is it loosely attached to your church? Or is your youth group a part of the church that you have, and they are members, but there is a program that is able to speak to them in the current age that they have and be able to apply scripture for them and where they're at. And so I've seen both ways happen, but you just want to be able to know, where do I fit in the church, and I want to stay there. So yeah, your mission statement allows you to say, no, we're not going to do that, or like, no, yes, we will do that. This is what our mission is.
Yeah. So if you're gonna do those things, you're gonna really have to know your pastor's kind of what he thinks about where you fit and what his mission is, because he's got a mission for the entire church that the Bible's been very clear part of what his mission is, and then he's going to have an idea of how you fit in accomplishing that overall mission.
Yeah, so like just some basic questions like, will your youth group have its own missionaries outside of the church's missionaries? Does your youth group take offering for their budget? Like a number of things that take place.
And how does fundraising work?
How does fundraising work? Does your youth group have its own constitution?
I wouldn't.
No. But you have some questions on like, no, we would never do that. Well, why would you not do that? What's your mission statement? What's your philosophy of this? And it does give you the ability to say no. So you were making a good point on parents. I have looked at parents and said, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, that I will help you do that. We can meet and we can discuss, and I can show you biblical principles. But no, I'm not going to be the sole accountability for your child doing their devotions. You should be doing. I will come in and I will support you, and I will ask if you're having problems. But I'm not the one. Like you are family. Like God has given you this beautiful and wonderful ministry with your child that you're missing out on. Like, jump in, be a part.
So after all of this conversation here, the person out there is saying, so give me an example.
Oh, okay. So I actually have a good.
What is a mission statement?
Okay, so I actually don't have mine memorized because again, it's just with my team, which I feel really bad at. But on my family mission statement, I don't have memorized, but I wrote it down. I have it mostly memorized, but I was scared enough that I was like, I'm going to mess it up in front of the camera. So this is what we promote when we go on deputation. This is what we promote when we're pretty much anywhere explaining our ministry here at Ironwood. And so which also includes our ministry at our church. So as a family, God is our guide. Wherever he leads, we will strive to humbly serve, cultivate godly relationships, and grow in our personal walk with him. And so that's my family mission statement. At some point, we're going to have it posted on our wall in our living room. And when my kids can read, that's something that they will memorize, that this is not just my wife and I's desire and attachment, but no, as a family, like we're going to follow where God leads, wherever that might be. And we're going to have fellowship with others. We're going to hopefully do that humbly. And we're going to keep our relationship strong with Christ.
So how's your youth group one different than that? Or what are there concepts?
So probably concepts are pretty similar. And it's just trying to take biblical principles, because the Bible tells me I need to serve. The Bible also tells me that I should not be proud and I should be humble. But the Bible communicates a number of things about parents. And so if I probably could pull it up, but if I were to think about, I just want to take biblical principles and I want to communicate them in a way of, these are the things I'm going to be unashamed about proclaiming, that as a youth group, that parents are the sole responsibility for their child. That more than likely is in our mission statement, to just communicate a number of points of, this is what a parent is, and this is what a kid is, and this is then the service, or our goal in serving your children is really through you.
So for me, I had two primary things that I was working to do, and so the first one was to help the pastor take a young person from being the one who has always served to becoming the servant. And so for me, this was a huge deal. That statement helped me understand that I was supporting the pastor in what he was doing. So I have a really hard time going to Scripture and finding, here is the mission for your youth group. Youth leaders do thus and such. I can't find that, but I can find plenty on what a church is supposed to do, how a church is supposed to operate. And so what I'm really doing is I'm an assistant to the pastor to help him and now I'm considering the audience. So the audience that I'm working with, youth, at 6th grade, I mean, everything is provided for them. They might have junior church and Sunday school. Everything is being poured into them. But by the time they come in 7th grade, they're just now barely able to start really contributing, like in a real way. But they've got to go from 6th, 7th grade to when they graduate from high school. Now they need to be a servant. I mean, their role in the church goes from, I get, to now I get and I give, and I get and I give. And so I want to help them make that transition, and many times we have people who leave our churches, after they graduate from high school. They're like, well, regular big church isn't fun, and I don't. That's not my goal. My mission is not amusement park room in the church. My goal is to show them that service to others is actually how God has made us. That's like the manual for the way we best live. And so that's a hard move. That's a hard move to get kids to think outside of themselves and think about others and serve other people. And then my second one, so I'm supporting the pastor in taking them from being served to becoming a servant. The next one was that I was supporting the parent in helping them disciple and train a well-rounded teen. So for me, I took all the emotional, social, spiritual, physical that I'm trying to actually, and again, this goes to the audience. 7th grader is not ready to live in this world. But by the time they graduate from high school, they need to be ready. And so the topics that I'm talking about are very just life 101. What does the Bible say about living? And it really kind of opened my eyes to things that I needed to teach, I needed to talk about. I mean, I found myself, okay, so if I'm gonna, I actually have to teach a parenting class in my youth group. Like they're about to become parents in just a few years. Like suddenly I'm thinking, okay, I've got to get them prepared. We need to talk about credit. We got to talk about credit cards. We got to talk about bank accounts, because they're setting all that stuff up and they're getting ready to live. So it's a really fun time to support the parent in what they are responsible for, is getting a kid ready to become not really independent, but to become dependent upon God. But in that, they're living independent of their parents. And so to get them to that spot, that was our mission. That was for us, those two things.
Yeah, and I think you have activities and Sunday school lessons and youth group and outreach and all these things that you then, like we were talking about the action cycle, you plan those things and you do those things, and then you really have to come back and evaluate and say, did I accomplish my mission, what I'm set out for? Did I help parents in those 4 areas? Did I accomplish what my pastor desires me? And if I didn't, I need to sit there and evaluate and say, do I ever do that activity again, or do I ever do that event again, or can I adjust it? Can I go back to the planning board and say, I missed it in these areas, and I can accomplish my mission if we did it different?
Yeah. So for me, I just took our entire youth calendar, and I divided everything that was on that calendar into one of those 2 categories. Is this serving the pastor in helping them become a servant, or is this helping a parent in the discipleship and training of their children? And then I would show, this one's really helping in the social aspect. This one's really helping in a spiritual. This one's helping them become a servant. So for us, it showed me weaknesses. So when we had a church potluck, I wanted our youth group to know our youth group is responsible for some part of the setup or cleanup. Like that's our job. That's what we get to do, and that's part of teaching them that they are capable of doing this. And every now and then there would be an activity that was just about fun. I mean, it was just and I'm telling a parent, no, I think that young people need to know that Christians can have fun. That we know how to have a celebration without sinning during that celebration. And so it really helped me take everything we were doing and tie them to one of those two things, which helped parents say, oh, now I get why they're doing that. Now I get why they want some money to make that happen, and that's okay. So.
I think what a mission statement forces you to do is it forces you to actually have a plan to what the future looks like outside of the next month.
Yeah.
Because you need to now accomplish that, and accomplishing that doesn't just happen out of sheer luck or everything just falls into place, which might happen occasionally. But now I have an intent, I have a purpose, and I want to accomplish these, one of these, 4 or 5 things. And how am I going to accomplish that? How am I going to grow my youth group socially? Is it just amongst ourselves, or are we going to be a part of another youth group activity, or are we going to join with 4 youth groups and do something together? And it forces a youth pastor to go, I actually need something a year in advance or 4 months in advance, and I need to get ahead of this so that I know I'm staying close to my mission statement.
Yeah. My last point here is that this mission statement really helped me kind of stay in my lane. So if I heard a parent saying, man, the youth calendar is so busy, we can't even get any family time, you've just got that thing packed, then I know, whoa, I'm supposed to be helping the parent do this. And if the pastor comes to me where something that we're doing is so big that it's just kind of consumed the church, then I know that that's not what my intent is. And so kids can be enthusiastic, and they can be rambunctious and all of that. So it just really helped me say, where do I fit? And I don't want to get outside of that lane. So that's some concepts on the mission statement and how we would have used it. And I hope this is a help to you.
We kind of did something similar to this, kind of like a vision planning at the beginning of this year. One thing that helped me at least figure out what the mission was starting with like what makes us sad about our youth group or youth groups in general. And so starting with some kind of problem. So one thing that like really bothered me, and I talked to my pastor about it, and I said this has kind of been on my heart, was the fact that a lot of my peers that I grew up in youth group are no longer in church and no longer serving and things like that. And same thing along the same lines of you want these young people to be integrated into the church, and I just saw kind of that was our problem. So if we could do anything to help these young people continue, then that would be our mission. But I thought it was really helpful to ask that question. What really bothers us? What is the problem that we're trying to fix?
That's good. Once you have the mission, now you're ready to like set a goal. So for me, I told my both pastors when I did it that one of my goals was to see 2 guys come out of my youth group that would be a pastor. And when that becomes your goal, suddenly you're like, if anybody like is interested in being a pastor, then you're now ready to spend money, help them. Like that's now going to be part of our budget. But I wanted that to be a goal right up front. And I had one year in particular, I set up a goal in our church. Financially, it had been a really rough season. So I said for this year, it's my goal that none of the youth activities cost parents anything. So we will either within the budget or internally or somebody that helps pay for it, but I'm not going to ask a parent for any money for this year. And I told the parents that up front. That's our goal. We'll see if we can make it. But it's one of those are kind of the goals where you're like, oh, I appreciate that. And it's going back to me reminding them that our mission is to help them train their children, and I think this will be a help to them. So I think once you get the mission statement, that the goals become really fun. Like the goals now, you can just list a bunch that fit with that mission statement.
And like what he said, your goals don't have to be like permanent and for forever.
Yeah.
So you can have for this year we're going to do this. That statement is, this year we want to kind of keep it under $300 a kid in our activity. Sometimes you have activities or years that you're like, oh, that family spent $4,000 because they have 3 kids in youth group, and we went to Six Flags and Disneyland, and then we did Ironwood, and they're like, oh wow, they spent a ton of money just on their kids. I don't think that's helped. Like we did great things, but I think I can try and keep this less.
Yeah, and you see a real difference when I knew this was my mission. And all of you guys know, your youth group at times runs young, and then all of a sudden it runs older, like it just kind of changes. And so, and in my youth group, it ran from girls to guys. Like I had 1 year, 16 girls and like 2 guys. And then over the course of 4 or 5 years, it was reversed. And I just wasn't catching on. At first, it was all guys, and we did this hike and we did this thing and we camped out under the stars, and I'm like, let's do that again next year. Let's do that again next year. And eventually, my wife is like, have you looked at our group? Okay, they want to do their nails. We're not doing that. And I'm like, oh man, I got a bad youth group, but really it's just a youth group that changed, but now I'm still trying to do the same thing, but my activities are going to look different because of my audience. So 7th, 8th, 9th grade is a totally different, teaching them to serve is totally different than 10th, 11th, 12th graders. So you've got to kind of adjust to that. Anybody else? Yeah, Brian.
So this is just a comment about your mission statement. Not only is it good for you as a leader, but it's also an effective communication tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a well-written mission, vision, core value statement can save you from 100 decisions.
Yeah.
It can also, for your youth staff, free them up to make decisions on their own. I have ideas coming in all the time. Wouldn't it be great if we did this? Wouldn't it be great if we did this? Wouldn't it be great if we did this? And the first thing that I do is, does that fit with our vision? Does that fit with our mission? And a lot of times it doesn't, sometimes it does, and so we can move forward. But it also can help so that everybody's not always coming to you for decisions. And as you teach your youth staff, this is what we're about, this is what we're going after, then underneath that vision, mission, core value statement, they have the freedom to make those decisions within those guardrails.
Yeah, that's really good. And once they know how you would make decisions, then they're becoming much more effective workers, saving you time as well. I pulled out Scott Olson's when he was at Northwest Valley. So this is like year 2 or 3 of Youth Leaders Retreat. He had 5 statements that all started with a W that were like what his purpose statement. So win the lost, welcome teens into Christian fellowship, walk in truth and obedience to God, worship the Lord, and work for the Lord. And that's a good little list that gives you something there. We always discuss that win the lost one because I didn't believe that my youth group was primarily an evangelistic tool. Like I thought that we would at times have unsaved kids, but my goal, I wasn't pushing on that. I felt that I really need to get at church. My job was to kind of anchor the kids that were Christians, that naturally, if those anchored Christians were a testimony that brought other kids to a belief in God, that would be the natural kind of result of them being there. But I didn't want really young Christians. So it was a big debate, as to what level we would be evangelistic, and so that mission statement helps kind of define what that is. And so anyway, that's it. Anybody else? I'll leave this up here, Paul.
What's a youth staff, by the way?
It's a small church, yeah.
But remind me what your 2 pillars were.
The 2 pillars is that I'm going to serve the pastor or assist the pastor by training those who are always served to becoming servants. And then I'm going to assist the parent in discipling and training their children in the emotion, spiritual,
Social and physical.
Those 4 aspects that you see, kind of that well-roundedness of a young person. That's the part that made youth work really practical, because you've got a few years right after puberty to get this person ready for adulthood. I mean, it's a crazy packed in time to teach everything from manners to how to be socially acceptable in the world. So, and not in a I need to fit in, but in a way that they can be productive members of church, society, all that. So, good. I have no idea how long we went there. We
24 minutes.
So that's our Q&A time. I have no idea, a live studio audience here. We're doing this for the first time.